Thank you. Well, it seems we have a full house. I noticed a lot of, I guess, it's a topic of great importance in law firms, generating leads and driving acquisition. So thank you for joining us. I've been focused on B2B organizations for close to a decade now. I've been working with legal, high-tech, financial services firms, including American Express, WilmerHale, Dell, and several other organizations. And helping organizations optimize their digital marketing investments has been a key focus of mine. So let's take a quick look at the agenda that we have for today. We'll start off by really talking about what is the state of lead generation in law firms, where are things today, and where are they headed. Then we'll talk a little bit about creating a roadmap for your demand generation success. One of the key takeaways from this webinar I hope to convey to you is this whole notion of the buying life cycle, of how buyers go through the journey of making a purchase and how marketers can target the buying life cycle and align with business development and the entire organization to drive acquisition. We'll also talk about multi-channel, so mobile, web, how it impacts acquisition. Content is quite important, as we all know. Marketers always struggle with coming up with the right content, which is contextual, which is relevant. We'll also talk about the website, which is your #1 marketing asset. We'll go over email automation, where something else unutilized as an email marketing tool can really drive acquisition, convert leads to opportunities, and really nurture opportunities to fruition. We'll also talk about SEO, which is quite popular in law firms. There's a lot of investments around SEO. Social media seems to be a topic of real interest these days, so we'll cover how social media influences buyers. We'll also talk about testing, how to gain insight, optimize the experience, and then ensuring that you have the right technologies to make acquisition occur. So again, excited to have all of you attend the webinar. As my colleague indicated, there will be a question and answer session towards the end, and I'll also share my contact information should you have any questions. All right, so let's get started. Real quick introduction to eDynamic. We are a digital consulting firm, and we blend strategy, experience, and technology to bring experiences to life. We've been working in the legal space for a few years, but beyond that, we service numerous verticals. And we're located in 4 countries, and we have a global footprint. Everything we do here in eDynamic, it's all about the digital marketer. All the way from strategy, experience, and technology, we offer capabilities, tools, strategies to help marketers to accomplish their goals of influencing buyers, engaging with buyers, and then ultimately converting buyers to clients. So let's get right into it. So let's talk about the state of demand generation in law firms. Demand generation is a focus not only to grow new clients, but to build referral sources, but also to get new business. New client acquisition is obviously a focus, and there's a lot of focus towards driving marketing dollars towards that activity. But what I find interesting is that targeting existing clients and understanding where their interests might lie in perhaps new practice areas allows cross-sell opportunities that could be quite interesting. But certainly new client acquisition, building referral sources, and driving repeat business seems to be the focus. And it seems that search engine optimization investments seem to be quite high. There seems to be a focus towards email marketing as well. And these are some limited source areas of focus, as you can see from this report a few years old, but it seems to continue to be the same from what we see with our clients. But the issue is that quality lead generation is the issue. Really, it really isn't working in terms of the investments that are going into lead generation. There's always concern around the quality of leads coming through. Attorneys and partners always complaining about what type of quality is being provided, is it even relevant? Marketing is always struggling to influence the sale. So there's a lot of churn going on there, and what we find is that the challenges with the whole demand generation process. And the issue is not just limited to the legal industry.
Welcome to GoToWebinar, Web Events Made Easy.
There was significant gaps in terms of the types of options available for buyers, in terms of offering content which was simply not relevant or simply confusing. There's a lack of multi-channel engagement, and there was no focus towards conversion. So there was spend on driving traffic, but then very little spend on converting traffic, almost 92 to 1. One of the key issues is that websites are not driving conversion like they should. If you've noticed, with many legal websites are almost like static information repositories. It's very hard to find information. Legal law firms have a lot of content, a lot of information to share, and it's kind of like going to a site with a shovel. You're always looking for information, and it's very hard to find the relevant information you're looking for. Websites tend to be everything for everyone. You're trying to get as much content out there, kind of like spray and pray, as we marketers like to call it. And there's very little use of intelligence in really understanding what people want, and that's a key concern. And that's why websites don't convert. Also, we find that channels are not working together. So the communication that you send through email, perhaps through a newsletter, an alert, it does not coordinate with what you have on your website, and that causes concern. So you'd be surprised by how much traffic newsletters and emails drive, and it's not consistent with the messages that they're sending. And so these channels are not really working together, and that causes issues with acquisition. Also, a significant concern is the quality of leads. The quality of leads is generally poor, is what our clients tend to tell us, and that's a key issue with demand generation. It's very difficult to convert leads to customers or clients, if you will. It's tough to decide which leads to focus on and which not to focus on, and all this causes friction between business development, marketing, and so on. And this graphic truly indicates one of the key concerns with demand generation. Like generating high-quality leads seems to be a key concern for B2B digital marketers across industries. And the concern is more so than even driving high-volume leads. It's all about quality and understanding leads which are ready to buy, opportunities which are ready to close, is a key concern for marketers in the industry. The issue with quality is that there's very little tracking, and what we see in law firms is that every lead, everything counts as a lead, right? Anything that comes through the door is a lead. Well, not really. If someone just has an inquiry, does not make that inquiry a lead, and passing those on to partners or attorneys or business development to really work on, it may not be the appropriate way to utilize their time. So there's very little tracking, and everything counts as a lead. So there's very little insight on what is truly a lead to begin with. That's why everything gets passed on, and that causes concern in terms of quality. One of the significant gaps that we see is between marketing and business development and partner and attorneys who are closing business. They're not playing the same game. Marketing is executing activities on their own, it seems, and business development is perhaps focused on events, and they're probably perhaps not as aligned as they should be. And that causes concern because they're just spraying, and they're not playing the same game, and it causes issues in terms of converting leads to clients or getting leads altogether. So the other issue that we see is that, in many law firms, there's this notion of, marketers don't really contribute to revenue. One of our clients, attorney in their firm, had mentioned to me over drinks one day that marketers are just a bunch of party planners. How can they help me sell? They can't help me sell. That is so far removed from the truth, just because marketers are not able to show revenue attribution. That's why they get no respect. And really not working together, not having the same game plan, causes this gap. And we'll talk about how to close this gap today. So how do you get there? Right? There are all these issues with lead generation. They're not limited to your industry. They're spread across B2B. So there really is an issue with demand generation and getting both the volume and the quality of leads and driving them to fruition. Well, you need to first start by understanding how your clients buy. And you need to get organized around what we call the buying lifecycle, and we'll touch on that today. So whether you're designing a website or you're targeting your digital marketing capabilities towards clients, it needs to be targeted towards how they buy. And looking at the buying lifecycle and coming up with a strategy that wraps around it will fundamentally change the way you market your capabilities. You need to be multi-channel. You need to be across channels. You need to get all your strategies going. They need to work cohesively together. So your content strategy, your website needs to be exceptional. Demand generation off of email, social media, etc. has to work well together. Search engine marketing has to be turned on. So all the strategies need to work cohesively together. So ultimately, for you to convert traffic all the way to client. Then you need to get the insights that will allow you to optimize the experience, for you to understand what buyers are looking for, and what clients need of your law firm, and then enable your partners and attorneys to be able to close business effectively. And with that insight, you also test and optimize the experience and do this whole process of continuous testing to help optimize experiences that drive conversion. And ultimately, your technology has to make it all happen. So this is what we're going to cover for the next little while, all the way from thinking about how buyers buy, how you need to target them, how you need to be across channels, how you need to gather insight, and then ultimately deliver experiences that engage your audience. So I touched on this whole notion of the buying life cycle, and this is a significant shift in the way marketers approach digital marketing altogether. So instead of thinking about what type of capabilities you need, what type of assets you need to put out there, the first question you need to ask yourself is, who are the segments you're targeting and what is their buying life cycle, and how they go through the journey from being someone who's unknown to ultimately becoming a client for your firm. How do they recognize needs? How do they search for options? How do they evaluate between various options that they may have? And then how do they ultimately make a decision around working with your firm? This fundamentally will change the way you look at targeting your digital marketing capabilities. So let's talk about why this is important. Well, it's important because there's a new buyer out there. That's why this is important. A lot of you on the phone are buyers yourself. You've changed over the years in terms of how you buy. You're informed. Publishing, social media tools allow you to learn, to investigate, to identify needs, and actually drive the buying process. And firms must essentially wrap around the buying process. Most B2B purchases, so whether it's professional services, products, there's a lot of data out there that indicates that providing them with the relevant content and information will help them navigate the buying process, and that influences how buyers buy. And that's quite important when it comes to how law firms need to create trust. They need to build relationships. The information that's provided to your prospects and clients helps build those relationships. So this new buyer has changed over the last decade or so. Earlier, the seller was in control. We were selling to these buyers. Today, the buyer is in control. The buyer will visit an organization's website, look for information. A buyer will read blogs, would read white papers, would attend webinars, as you are doing today. So the buyer identifies opportunities. The buyer identifies vendors they want to work with. The buyer identifies needs that they may have. So the buyer is in control. The seller is no longer in control. And this changes the way we need to engage with buyers. So if the buyer is in control, what's really happening is that, the old sales process of targeting prospects, qualifying them, it's not working as effectively. The buying process has changed. The buyers have changed, but we're still selling the same way. And that's the issue. There's a big gap. But buyers are educating themselves, as you are on this call today, for example. You're recognizing opportunities, you're evaluating options, and you're driving the vendors. You're driving the firms. You're no longer being driven by the sales process. So we looked at a few stages in the buying life cycle, all the way from need recognition to making a purchase. And it's important to align and influence this process. This is what marketers truly need to do. And once you segment your audience, you understand what the motivations are of your buyers, you figure out messaging and strategies that target various segments, you actually start to then influence the journey. You move segments of buyers from need recognition to all the way to helping them make the decision. So this is happening in congruence with how business development, the attorneys in the firm, they're actually engaging with the buyer, because the buyer is driving the process, engaging with them as well. So the way firms target the buying life cycle will have a huge influence in how they're able to convert leads to opportunities and ultimately to clients. So understanding what your buying life cycle looks like, so understanding how your buyers identify need for your services, how they qualify you, and then how they ultimately select you, will allow you to really think about how you can create awareness for your services, how you can create relationships as they qualify you, and how you can ultimately convert prospects to clients. And then you can start to think about, well, how to target the buying life cycle with relevant digital marketing capabilities. So whether it's product microsites to enable consideration, blogs to really influence their preference, customer reviews, testimonials, client testimonials per se, they will help drive action. So ultimately, it's all about that buying life cycle. So if you can understand how buyers buy, you can align your processes around the buying life cycle and ultimately target them with your digital marketing capabilities for each stage in the buying life cycle. You will find that conversion really does happen. So how do you do it, right? We have a process that I'd be happy to share with you. Feel free to reach out to me. And it's a fairly simple process that marketing, business development, and perhaps attorneys in some practice areas or partners can come together and really map up this buying life cycle. It would bring an incredible amount of alignment. But we'll go through an example quickly. So it starts by understanding the buying process, then segmenting your audience. Once you segment your audience, then you can think about what type of messages and targeting that you need to do to convert buyers across each stage in the buying life cycle. And then you can think about the digital marketing capabilities and technologies you need to make it all happen. So as an example, let's say the in-house counsel in a manufacturing firm is searching for a firm to handle the employee dispute, right? So what would their buying life cycle look like? How would they recognize their need? How would they search for options? How would they evaluate alternatives? How would they make a decision and ultimately engage with a firm? What type of questions go through their mind? So some of the questions that come to mind, I'll just go through a few of these. What risks am I exposed to? Is a firm exposed to, or the manufacturing company exposed to? What type of services are needed to solve these problems? Who is the expert in the field? How do I shortlist providers? Have they solved such problems for others? You need to build a relationship with firms before you actually engage with them. So if this is what the buying life cycle looks like for a buyer, so let's think about what your strategy messaging capabilities need to be to ultimately engage with this buyer and actually convert them into a client. So your objectives might be to create awareness for perhaps employee issues and related services, to engage with this audience, to build relationships, to enable their decision-making process. And then ultimately when they do become clients, it doesn't end. You have to cross-sell and upsell them. So what strategies may you provide to ultimately drive this process? So perhaps you need to provide a point of view on employment risks and workplace safety issues that would create awareness around some of the issues in the industry and how you have solved them. Perhaps thought leadership is needed to drive opportunities to convert traffic to leads. How do you differentiate in the marketplace? How do you build trust? And how do you ultimately understand needs and process? So these might be some of your key objectives. And then you can think about the messaging that you need at each stage in the buying life cycle, all the way from a webinar, perhaps on workplace safety, perhaps landing pages that would convert traffic to opportunities or leads. Perhaps you need to nurture these leads because they're not ready to be converted into opportunities for partners and attorneys to go speak to. They perhaps need to be nurtured a little bit more. And then as they make decisions, perhaps offer client testimonials on your website, case studies, attorney bios and social profiles, because the buyer is looking for this information in their buying life cycle. So if you are able to provide this information when they need it, you're going to enable them to ultimately make a decision and become a client. And once they do become clients, if you have analytics and segmentation, you're able to then target buyers across their needs based on your understanding of if they visit your website, for example, and they are perhaps looking at a new practice area, perhaps there could be an alert in the CRM. And that analytics can then allow you to actually trigger off an email automation campaign, for example. So once you start to map these things out, then you can start to think about what capabilities you need to drive this process. Do you need a blog on workplace safety issues? Do you need a webinar? Do you need to conduct SEO on workplace safety so that when someone's looking, they find you? And then when they do find you, how do you convert them into leads? You need landing pages. You need content that they would actually use to convert with, right? You perhaps need social media to then engage with this audience. Once they actually become a lead, then you can use social media to, along with Twitter and LinkedIn, build relationships with these prospects. And ultimately personalize content to them because you know who they are and give them what they're looking for, again, along their buying life cycle. And then perhaps kick off email nurturing programs. Use your website, CRM, and LinkedIn to help build that relationship. And then kick off email nurturing so that they can ultimately make a decision, offer testimonials on your website, and get insight into your CRM so that your attorneys and partners have the information they need on these prospects to help them, to enable them to convert them to clients. So this is an example of how you can really define the buying life cycle and your strategy to target the buying life cycle all the way from messaging and capabilities. And if you do that, what you'll find is that marketing and business development will truly get aligned around how they need to target the buyer, how events in the website and email marketing need to work together. And once you're able to gain alignment, you'll find that everyone would be in sync, and you're really aligned with the buyer's needs, and you're helping buyers make those decisions around your services and solutions. And then you can select the capabilities and technology that you need to convert buyers to clients. So hopefully this gave you an idea of how you can go about creating a buying life cycle, and we've got templates I'd be happy to share with you. But it's a very revealing exercise around how buyers buy and how you need to influence them through the stage, and how marketing, business development, and ultimately attorneys and partners work together to actually move buyers down the buying life cycle. So once the buying life cycle is understood, you can use the buying life cycle to really think about what type of content is needed on your website, from a webinar perspective, a perspective of email, newsletters, etc. So again, the buying life cycle can drive your content strategy. But let's talk about content. The challenge with content is that's not easy. Coming up with quality content, if you face that challenge, and I'm certain that many of you do, it's a challenge which is quite broad in the B2B marketplace. So content is not easy. It's hard to come up with content. It's just a recognition of the problem. And oops, I think I skipped over. So when you do come up with content, as I mentioned, needs to be focused on buyers' needs. You need to think about content that is along the buying life cycle. Copy on the website needs to be minimal so that it's engaging. Thought leadership content is quite important for your website or your digital marketing initiatives overall. Your content needs to be findable, and we'll talk about search in a little bit as well. And you need to think about what type of interactive content. So might be interesting. So for example, testimonials. We looked at the buying life cycle. The buying life cycle indicated that perhaps testimonials are important. So then you can think about how to create those testimonials and ultimately enable your website. The other area we talked about was multi-channel. So you need to be where your audience is. Quite often clients ask me a question around, well, should we do social media? My simple question to them typically is, well, are your clients there? You need to be where your clients are. It's really that simple. So perhaps Facebook is more relevant for talent and for HR, but LinkedIn is very relevant for organizations. So having SEO optimized is quite important. Having mobile site, we've all heard that mobile is going to become web. So mobile and web, the lines are blurring every day. So you need to be where your audience is. And what needs to be considered when you think about all your channels is it's all interconnected. Emails and newsletters drive significant amount of your site traffic. So when you're thinking about coming up with the appropriate email marketing strategy, you need to consider how the website would play a role in ultimately getting traffic and engaging with your audience and helping them understand the value that you offer. Social is a huge contributor for website traffic. So you need to think about how you're going to leverage social appropriately, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter or even perhaps Facebook, to drive traffic on your website. So we've been referencing the website quite a bit, and it's a key asset of your digital strategy. In fact, it is the #1 marketing tool based on the survey that you see noted here and various others that I've seen. Websites are so important that your acquisition, your digital marketing cannot be successful without having an effective website. So what does it take to have an effective website? The experience needs to be very engaging. As I mentioned, you need to be multi-device. It's quite important for law firms which are international. They need to be multilingual. Intelligence is quite important and needs to target the buying life cycle, as we talked about earlier. The website needs to be personalized. Content needs to be relevant, and it needs to be easy to find that content. Experience needs to really bring your firm to life. It needs to be personal. You know, we see so many websites which, you know, law firms are all about people. They're all about expertise. That needs to come to life when it comes to your website. So the branding, the navigation, the content, it needs to convey who you are and what you do. Personalization is important. So we looked at the buying life cycle. So once you know who the buyer is, and they perhaps convert on a white paper and they give you their lead information, then there's no point spraying them with email newsletters on areas which are not of interest. So we find that providing personalized content has a large impact on your ability to convert your prospects to clients. Search is quite important. So how you look for information, how you find information, you know, the attorney profiles are quite important. So how users are able to go and find information through your site is quite important. So using faceted search, guided navigation will help them find information they need as they evaluate their options and ultimately engage with your firm. Attorney bio is probably one of the most visited pages on your website. In fact, 56% of the site visits go to attorney bios as per Great Jake's Marketing in a survey that they did. So information needs to be easy to find. You need to be able to get to the attorney bios quickly. They need to be linked with all your social assets, whether it's LinkedIn or blogs. They need to be personal. They need to be easy to navigate. You should avoid content walls, for example. So focusing really on getting the attorney bios right will go a long way with buyers looking for you, finding relevant content, the right people to work with, and ultimately engaging with your firm. Call to action is quite important. So I recommend to our clients that always think about merchandising. You know, we see how in retail organizations merchandise their products. Well, you need to think about merchandising as well. So white paper, for example, is a significant item. So you need to really think about how you'll merchandise that to drive leads, how you'll create scent, how you will get people interested in your offering, how your content will be persuasive. It will ultimately drive action. So these are the types of things that are quite important, because just having content on your website is one thing, but ultimately the call to action is what tips prospects over to become leads and opportunities. Once you've driven leads off of your website and someone's downloaded a white paper, attended a webinar, you have what we would call, you know, leads. They're not yet true opportunities, but you need to convert these leads into clients. That's the goal of digital marketing. So a nurturing strategy is quite important, and this is one area I find generally law firms are lacking. Moving your prospects from consideration to commitment across the buying life cycle is perhaps the most important role that I feel digital marketing needs to play. In fact, the leads that you get through the door, the reason that they are not high quality is that 70% of them, they're not ready to close yet. So you need to target them with targeted, personalized content so they can engage with them, so that when they're ready to buy, your firm is there to service them. You are top of mind. So engaging in that one-to-one dialogue is quite important. You need to understand who they are, who your prospects are, what they're looking for, and instead of spraying them with content which is not relevant, it's important to target them with content that is very relevant. So your campaigns have to be multi-step. They need to be specific to what specific audiences. You need to track everything. Who opens your content? How much information have they read it. That information needs to make it ultimately to your CRM so that when an attorney or a partner looks at a profile, they can see, how much content that prospect has read on your website. How much of the content are they reading? What type of content are they reading? That insight will give them what they need to engage with that prospect. So email marketing is also a key driver of events. I'm surprised to see that events are quite popular, obviously, with law firms, but they're not promoted aggressively, especially through email marketing. And as HubSpot's research indicates, email actually is the largest driver of events. So effective email marketing towards events and then nurturing the prospects that show up in the events is quite important. So leveraging email marketing appropriately for events can go a long way in converting, your prospects to clients. Lead generation is important, and lead nurturing, as I said, was important. But how you go about lead nurturing is an interesting discussion to be had. So really thinking about how a prospect ultimately moves across the buying life cycle and is interested in your firm and the services that you offer, you can accomplish that with a scoring system. So you can identify what influences buyers and then leverage that to create a scoring system. And these scoring systems aren't difficult. You can build a model. There's quite a few available online. What that really allows you to do is really think about what type of information you need to share with the prospect at what point, and then how those prospects are then passed on to the attorneys to your firm. So you're not sending leads when they're not ready. You're not sending junk information. You're sending qualified leads who are ready to buy. So if they've been nurtured with relevant content and their lead score is at a certain point, that's a great point to send them to be closed. So really thinking about that and then measuring and refining the process is really important in your journey to convert prospects. So we talked about the lead nurturing example. So depending on how they touch information, you can apply numbers and scores. So if someone completed a poll, you give them a number. If someone downloaded a white paper, you can keep adding on. So if their level of engagement keeps going high, you can ultimately say that they're ready. They've hit a number, say 40 in this example on the right, and they're ready to convert. And they will ultimately fall into this buying zone, as we call it, where the level of engagement is high, the profile match is high, and when your partners get those leads and they can see the insight of what poll they completed, what paper they downloaded, how much content they touched on their website, they will find that the conversations that they have with the prospects are very insightful. Another key driver of success demand generation is SEO. It's the most widely used digital marketing solution in law firms to drive traffic. So it is. We all know about SEO. It's important to continue to do it, to have link back traffic, to really think about long tail searches as well, and then ultimately drive SEO strategy. Social media is a topic of great interest. There's a lot of discussion now in terms of whether it influences the buying process or not. Well, the short answer is yes. As a buyer is thinking about considering your services, you can leverage social media to have conversations with those buyers and share information which is relevant to them. So you can influence them to ultimately drive acquisition. Social media is being used across law firms, so LinkedIn is being used heavily, Twitter as well, Facebook as well, blogs not as much, but the key issue with social media really is that it's not being used strategically. But it should be, because we're seeing more and more data that clients are being influenced to convert based on information they receive on social media. In fact, a recent report indicated that 4 in 10 new clients, 4 in 10 law firms indicated that new clients were using social media to make those decisions to ultimately become clients. So it's here, it's now, and I think you should think about how you're going to leverage it to drive engagement with your prospects. So again, with social media, think about how you target social media across the buying lifecycle. So when they are at the stage of perhaps engaging with your firm and evaluating you as a firm, sharing information that might be relevant around case studies, white papers, which may be specific to their needs. Building the attorney's LinkedIn profiles are quite important. They're actually very heavily visited, perhaps in many cases more than the websites themselves. You need to really manage that Twitter account. Again, avoid that spray and pray. Really think about what type of content buyers are looking for and drive engagement. Make your website social. So social is not just capabilities from a Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter perspective. Everything needs to be social. So when someone attends an event, they can be added to your LinkedIn or Twitter account. You can also consider Facebook for recruiting purposes, but it might be outside the context of what we're talking about now. But again, social can be used in many different areas. But once you have identified the capabilities that you would use from a social perspective, you can then think about what type of content you want to distribute, and then think about a governance strategy that ensures that you're getting the right type of information out to your audience. Analytics is so important, and it's quite revealing when I have conversations with marketing and business development and technology, and I simply ask them a simple question: what if your partners can truly get insight into what your prospects are doing in engaging with your firm? How much time have they spent on the website? How much time have they spent reading a blog? What type of information have they opened from your newsletters? And using that, not only can you score your prospect, but you can give attorneys and clients insight as to where these prospects are. So in this example that you see on the right, you can see that someone's opened an email, they submitted a form, they visited your website, perhaps they're ready to talk to you, as opposed to someone who's not really engaged and they haven't really done anything. So it's important to connect your CRM system all the way up to your website and email marketing system so that ultimately the insight that's needed to close prospects is available to partners. Once your digital marketing capabilities are applied and they're being leveraged, it's important to optimize the experience. Optimizing is perhaps one of the most important things you can do because once you roll something out, you need to continuously optimize capabilities. You can do it many ways. On your website, you can use A/B testing. You can perhaps even use multivariate testing. You could potentially think about experience optimization. So you can use testing capabilities to continuously optimize, whether it's a landing page or the message, to drive conversion. Ultimately, leads are going to be driven by the content that's sticky, and testing can really allow you to drive conversion, as indicated by this eMarketer survey. Technologies are just as important. You need the right technologies to drive conversion. The technologies that drive conversion include analytics. You need search on your website. You need email marketing. You need CMS. Ultimately, they all come together to move a buyer down the buying life cycle and become a client. So with that, I will wrap up today's webinar and give you folks an opportunity to ask questions, and we'll go from there. Any questions so far?
Yes, Rahul, we do have a few questions. So the first question is, how do we define the buying cycle for law firms?
That's a great question. There's certain tools that I can share with you, but it's not that difficult. It's just a fancy term for saying, understand your audience, understand the stages that they go through before they make a purchase, understand what criteria from one stage to another is necessary to be completed, and then think about how you can enable them to how you could engage with them across each stage, give them the information that they seek to ultimately convert. So all the way from the beginning, when they're thinking about a problem they have, you can influence their thinking by perhaps sharing information when they go search online, sharing information which is optimized through SEO with those problems, perhaps offering testimonials, as I'd indicated, when they're further along in the buying life cycle through on your website or perhaps through an email marketing campaign. So really thinking about what type of content you could drive towards the buying life cycle. And then you can really start to think about, well, how you use email marketing, social media, your website to actually provide that information and distribute it and offer it to the buyer at the right message to the right person at the right time. That's what it's all about. But do reach out to me if you have any questions around the buying life cycle. I'd be happy to share our templates with you. Next question.
The next question is, what CMS do you recommend for the website?
Well, there are many. There's so many options. There's thousands of CMS options out there. I encourage you to take a look at what Gartner has to say. You have options. Gartner and Forrester will provide insight into who are the industry leaders, and then you have options around their industry-specific CMSs like the Hubbard, and then more contemporary and market leaders such as there's several, including Day, Sitecore, Electron, Drupal. It all depends on what your needs are. So depending on needs, budget, and what you're trying to accomplish, you can select the CMS. Next question.
The next question is, can you speak a little bit more about landing pages? How are they different or same as web page?
That's a great question. Actually, landing pages are very targeted. They're targeted towards a specific purpose. So if you are trying to target an audience around a particular subject area, or you want to convey a point of view, landing pages they strip out everything else and they put focus around that particular piece of content. The core focus of a landing page is to communicate the value of that point of view so that a buyer is willing to share information in terms of their name, their phone number, etc. through the lead form. So landing pages are quite targeted. You can link them with email nurturing programs. You can link them with pay-per-click, and they target a specific purpose, and they can be leveraged for that. On the website, though, you can still have forms to convert prospects to leads, but the information is quite vast and it covers many different areas. So that's the difference, really the focus. Landing pages are more focused than websites. Any other questions?
Yes, we do have a couple more questions. The next question is, how does nurture marketing through email impact demand generation?
That's a great question. Actually, it's interesting. Organizations like Eloqua and Marketo and Silverpop, they really define this whole space of demand generation through email automation. And these tools, what they allow you to do, for example, we consider the buying life cycle, and we use this example of in-house counsel looking at a particular issue, and they're potentially going to go through a process to make a decision. So email marketing can actually target at each stage of the buying life cycle depending on where the individual or the organization is with specific information. So you can have trigger campaigns with automated content, with white papers, followed by testimonials, followed by more value-driven statements that can really influence the buyer. So you can automate the nurturing process so that you can stay engaged, because a buyer may come to your website once, but they may not continue to come back to the website. And as I indicated, if you link email marketing with your website, you're able to then drive buyers back to your website because email marketing can really engage with them. But again, you need to avoid spamming them with all kinds of information that has to be targeted and personalized. So email automation will allow you to personalize content along the buying life cycle and automate the whole process of providing information, the right information to the right person at the right time. Next question.
The next question is, based on what criteria should leads be handed over?
That's a great question. So, we talked a little bit about this whole notion of the lead scoring model. And it may, these can be simple and complex depending on how complex the sales or the buying process is. So you can define a scoring mechanism that if someone comes to your website, they read content once, they indicate interest, they download something, perhaps that's not the right time to reach out to them. If they come back and they again show interest in a similar area and they perhaps download another type of content or they read information on your website, all that can be tracked and that can then contribute to the score. And you can have a threshold score that once the prospect hits that score, either by reading content on your website, blogs, emails, any asset really, that they are ready to then be converted into an opportunity that a partner may take on. But before that, perhaps they're not ready and you may get some feedback around the quality of the lead being handed over. Next question.
The next question is, how does social media impact the buying life cycle?
That's a great question. I think social media is, I was having a conversation yesterday where someone indicated that B2C is where social media has more of an impact. And, actually it's B2B. Because if you consider the buying life cycle in a B2B sale versus a B2C, which could be more instantaneous, there's more of an opportunity to influence the buyer. So social media allows you to have a conversation over a period of time, sharing information, understanding what type of information they're touching, and all that can be tracked now with the tools that are available. So social media can really allow you to influence the buyer because there's only so much you can send out to the buyer, to your prospects. You can only send out so many emails. They'll come to your website when they need to. You can only call them a certain amount of time. So social media allows you to have the continuous conversation if they're following you on Twitter, for example, that allows you to influence the buyer. And you can track that engagement back to your website. Any further questions?
Well, actually, yes, we do have a few questions, but so since we're running out of time, we'll have to, we'll get back to all the unanswered questions after the webinar via email.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for sending the list of questions I can see on my screen is quite long, and there's quite a few people here. But feel free to reach out to me. My information would be available. And I would be happy to answer any further questions. Thank you and have a great day. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for attending our webinar. We hope you found it informative. The recording for today's webinar.
The organizer has ended the session, and this call will be disconnected. Goodbye. The organizer